so too does the challenge. And so you're constantly giving these small dips and small rises as the game goes on and gets harder and harder, but really forces you to increase your competency in order to actually complete the game.
So there's almost, before we move on to Pac-Man, there's almost like this paradox of failure. Like, you know you don't want to fail, you want to win, but you know that in playing the game you're going to fail a bunch of times, but you're still willing to play it.
Exactly. The covenant that you signed was that I know this is going to be difficult when I went into the game, so I can't really complain too loud, with the exception of everyone on the internet. So Pac-Man. Why are we showing Pac-Man now? Well, this idea of difficult games kind of comes from the old age of arcades. And that's because arcade games were never designed to be finished. This is what happens to Pac-Man when you reach the end of the game.
Well, I mean, there was no end. I guess it was designed to be infinite, but then they ran out of memory. So
yeah,
that's
what you're looking at is a memory dump. It's saying, I can't do this anymore. The games that in arcades back then, they were designed to be difficult because what was their primary goal? To suck down as many coins as you were willing to put into it. So the design was there to make the game as difficult as possible. And we see this with games like Defender as well. Again, a game that is brutally, brutally difficult, one that requires you to play it over and over and over again to get those competencies up. The people who are willing to actually spend the money to increase their competencies, those are the kinds of people who are going to make you a lot of money. But then games started to come into the home. You could buy them yourself. This game caused me so much frustration as a youngster. I was absolutely infuriated by it, but I would not stop playing it either because it was a really, really cool game. But it did something a little bit different. In that top right-hand corner, you see that there's an exclamation mark that comes up every time an obstacle is about to be thrown in your way. And that gives you a forewarning that something difficult is about to happen. And it starts to increase that flow zone. It starts to increase your ability before you get too frustrated and just quit.
Well, I guess also it's reducing the difficulty level a little bit because it's giving you a warning that something's coming. And so we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence of games that are quite difficult. And one example of this that I have really enjoyed playing was Spelunky. And in Spelunky, you're the little miner and you've got to sort of navigate through a bunch of obstacles and you only have sort of 3 or 4 lives. And once you die, that's it. You have to restart the whole thing again. But basically, Spelunky becomes a game of skill because the levels are randomly generated each time you restart the game. So there's no point memorizing or trying to learn like where power-ups and things are. You just have to get a lot better at avoiding enemies or killing enemies and things like that. So you need to practice again and again, get your skill level up, you start winning and getting a bit further, and eventually you can get to a point where you can finish the game. But at the start, there is no way to play the game. Well, I'm not going to say no way because someone will go and do it. It's very, very difficult to finish the game on your first run through, basically, because you have to spend some time learning. And because of that, this game isn't for everyone because it is a little bit challenging and it does require a little bit of learning and it's difficult.
And there are so many great examples of this. In fact, we found way, way too many. And we're going to just try and blast through a couple of them because otherwise we could just be up here talking for hours and hours and everyone would leave, and that's fine. But one we can't go away without mentioning is, of course, Super Meat Boy.
And I think Phil said we had to mention this or he would
for a very
disown
important
us.
reason.
What? Oh, Phil has actually 100%ed Super Meat Boy. And if anyone who doesn't know Super Meat Boy, this is an extremely, very difficult achievement to do. So I think that deserves a round of applause.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I only got like a third of the way through the game and I've not touched it since. It got very frustrating very quickly.
Yeah, it's not a game. It's not for me, is the answer to that question. So then we start to see games come out like Cuphead. And Cuphead is, this is a game that was marketed on its difficulty. This was the developers coming out and saying, this game is hard. It is super, super hard. It is hectic. It is mayhem. And if you want to play this game, you better expect it to be hard. So these are games that are marketed on the fact that they are going to cause you frustration. Again, bringing that covenant out early and saying, hey, sign this pact and pay us money and we'll give you a terrible experience. And yet, it's a hugely, hugely successful game.
But then when you do win or get to the end or get to that next level, it's super satisfying if you've struggled all the way through to get to that point.
And that's fine. Some people really, really enjoy games that are like this. But some people like games that are more like this.
So a lot of modern games coming out now, especially a lot of AAA studio games, are trying to be appealing to as wide of an audience as possible. And in order to do that, they need to have difficulty levels which can be changed. So a lot of games, and the new Tomb Raider is a really good example of this, have difficulty levels you can change in the menu. The Tomb Raider one we wanted to highlight because it's the first time that Tim or I had seen a game that separated the difficulty out into 3 different categories. So not only can you change the difficulty of the combat, you can also change the difficulty of the exploration and the puzzles. Or you could just change one of the 3. You don't have to change them all because usually it's sort of a all-in-one thing. So I really like difficult puzzle games, so I would leave that on hard, but perhaps put the others down to easy or normal. So here's an example of the exploration setting. So on easy, you can see the markers are really obvious as to where you can climb, and also, Tim, you were telling me yesterday, it also means like it's easier to grab the ledges, you're less likely to fall.
So
all that sort of thing.
There's a bigger range that you can grab onto. If you miss, it'll go, nah, you got it. You're fine.
Yes, her hand is down here, but yeah, sure, you got it. And then in normal and hard, it gets a bit trickier each time. So this is a puzzle on different difficulty levels. So on hard, it gives you no clues whatsoever. You don't even know there's a puzzle there. Normal, it's telling you which items are involved in solving the puzzle. And on easy, it's telling you which item to interact with first in the puzzle to give you that extra helping hand. And the other thing these bigger modern games are doing is letting you change that difficulty level at any point during your game. So if you do get stuck on a part of the game, you can go and change the difficulty to easy, progress through that challenging part, and then turn it back on to normal or hard. And that just means that instead of getting stuck and wasting your 30-hour save and having to start a whole new game on easy, which is sort of how it used to be, where you set your difficulty level at the very start of the game and that was it, now you can if you really do get stuck, but you want to find out what happens at the end of the story, you can still get there.
So what happens if a game doesn't do that? What if it does the exact opposite, in fact? This is a game called I Want to Be the Guy, and a couple of groans in the audience suggest that a couple of people have tried it out. This is a game that turns everything on its head.
Kind of just wants to mess with your mind.
Absolutely. It takes things and says, okay, this item gives you health. And you go, okay, fantastic, I got health from that item. I'll go pick it up again. The second time you pick it up, you get health. Fantastic. The third time you pick it up, it kills you. And there's no warning that it's going to do that. Sometimes you'll jump on a platform, and at the last second, the platform will just move away because it doesn't want you to land on that platform.
And on this level, instead of the apples being friendly pick-me-ups, they're trying to attack you.
Exactly. So this is a game that is actually physically impossible to play on your first run, because there are some parts in it that are not heralded beforehand, they're not knowable, you just have to learn from failure and keep trying until you get there in the end. And then we've got games like this. So QWOP is a fantastic example of a game that, again, subverts your expectations, takes the controllers and says, okay, let's make it as absolutely difficult as possible.
So if you haven't played QWOP, basically you've got to use the buttons on your keyboard, Q, W, O, and P, to control the legs of the runner and try and get it to run, get him to run as far as possible. And it is extremely, extremely difficult.
But it does result in the best cosplay
goals
that I have ever seen.
This is what it looks like when you play the game.
I mean, his dedication is just absolutely fantastic. So this is a game made by Bennett Foddy.
And this is a game he released very recently,
so
which is
Bennett
sort of
Foddy
in
made
the
both
same
of these.
vein. Yeah. So in Getting Over It, you play a person stuck in a cauldron, by the looks of it, with a sledgehammer, as you do. And the whole point of the game is to move on the screen from left to right and try and get over these obstacles using your swinging of your sledgehammer and a bit of momentum. And there's lots of science. And oftentimes you fall, and when you fall, you sort of get set back a long way in the level. And as you're playing, you get to certain points and you hear these beautifully narrated sort of quotes on failure and learning and perseverance, and it makes you even more frustrated.
Yeah, I think it's meant to sort of help you, but it really just does amplify that sense of frustration.
You're like, I know, I gotta get to this next bit. And so there's other games which I really like puzzle games, and even in puzzle games have mechanics which teach you how to solve the puzzles and teach you how to play. So one that I really enjoyed, and it's probably one of the few games I 100%ed, which I've talked about before, is The Witness. And then I tried Stephen's Sausage Roll. If you haven't played Stephen's Sausage Roll, this is what it looks like. You're a little person with giant fork attached to the front of your body, and you're trying to push the sausages around to cook them evenly on both sides. And you need to cook all sausages evenly to solve the little puzzle world. And I think I'm about a third of the way through Stephen's Sausage Roll, and I am just stuck, and I haven't even seen what the hell is going on in that level on the top right. I have not even seen those levels yet. So even though Stephen's Sausage Roll teaches you and kind of gives you everything you need to know in order to solve the puzzles, it's still extremely, extremely challenging to get to that right answer, because there's usually only one correct answer for each island, and it can involve multiple moves. And so if you do one move in the wrong order or in the wrong way, you can't solve it, and you have to restart the island.
And if you haven't played Stephen's Sausage Roll, but you have played The Witness,
just to give you an idea. So that's the creator of The Witness saying, yes, even I find Stephen's Sausage Roll difficult.
So there's another type of difficulty in games that we also explored, and that is the difficulty of games like simulators.
Because I guess as you get closer to real life is quite tricky. Like flying a plane in real life is quite tricky, so yeah.
And this is how flight simulators are sold to us. And this, I would argue, actually breaks this sacred covenant between developer and player, because it suggests that you're going to play this beautiful game with these panoramic views, but what you're actually going to do is spend 8 minutes in the hangar doing pre-flight checks.
False advertising, I say.
Yeah, this should really be in the trailer. And also the taxiing and waiting for the air traffic controller of a virtual airport. Say, well, actually, hang on, there's still planes coming in, and there's a bit of a delay on runway 3, so you're going to have to wait an extra 20 minutes on there. And then you have to listen to the safety brief from Delta Airways playing behind you as well, because that's an important part, that your virtual plane citizens are kept, safe and aware of their surroundings. So these are games that are very, very difficult, almost out of tedium. And they don't provide you with an instruction manual. They don't necessarily say, here is exactly how to fly a plane, and probably for good reason, because we don't want everyone going, yeah, I can play Flight Simulator X, 10, I guess, Steam Edition. But then there's
simulators like this one.
We don't know who these are for.
I think this person's doing the false advertising thing, trying to sell more copies.
So games like Farming Simulator, you have to believe that they are a parody, and yet they're so incredibly popular. This is now on the Switch. So you can play Farming Simulator on the Switch if you want. It is a very interesting experience. Just gonna move on from that one.
And we're trying to think of recent simulators that have been released, and this one has been doing the rounds online that I've seen. I haven't played it, I can't say, but if you ever wanted to experience what it's like to buy and then renovate a house and then sell it.
Which is very relevant, because we're millennials and we are never going to own a house, let alone buy one, then buy another one, renovate it and sell it. You'll notice that this game does not include smashed avocado.
Yeah.
So I would argue how real this game is. But then we get to games like Kerbal Space Program. Okay,
I don't think we can have a panel year without Tim mentioning this game.
It's just not possible. So Kerbal Space Program is a game, it is very, very dear to my heart. And this video, the Fly Build, Fly Build something trailer, it's not actually the official Kerbal Space Program trailer. All the credits to these videos will be on the website for Press X to Science as well, if you want to see a little bit more about some of these details that people have put into these games. But Kerbal Space Program is a game where you have to build rockets and fly them with no previous understanding of orbital mechanics, Newtonian physics, rocket equations, literally rocket science. When someone says, it's not rocket science, this is rocket science. But there's no real tutorial, there's no real instructions, and it has a very, very high bar to entry. And then there are mods that expose every single number conceivable. This is the stuff of my dreams. The stuff where people wake me up and I'm like, why? Why did you wake me up? It was so beautiful. There were home and transfer plots everywhere. If you look for mods with the word real, there are 78 realism mods. just for Kerbal Space
I
Program.
thought it was realistic enough. I didn't
No.
realize you could be even more realistic.
So people obviously crave this sense of realism, this ultra difficult level that they can really engage in.
And I think it's a sense of being able to play with something that you can't play with in real life.
So Kerbal Space Program has this kind of flow plot. It doesn't actually really get any harder. You kind of have, it depends how you're playing it. If you're on challenge modes, it does get a little bit harder, a little bit easier over time, but it mostly stays the same. Physics doesn't change, and the core game mechanics are just physics. So your challenge goes up and down very, very slightly as you learn new tricks, but then try to take on bigger challenges for yourself.
So simulators like Kerbal are starting to be used in schools and classrooms as Kerbal Space Program EDU. And this is a newer sort of simulation that we're seeing come out. So it's, Labster is a company who are making VR science simulations specifically for use in education. So
Does
it's
this
still,
look like a fun game?
it's still a game. Kind of, yeah, it's still a game. You may or may not find it enjoyable. But their purpose was to make VR simulations of experiments that perhaps a high school student wouldn't have the equipment for. Maybe it was too dangerous, and explosions, so on and so forth. So there's not too much you can break in a simulation. So this is what Labster was doing, and that sort of got us talking about the rise of edutainment in games, and are they fun? So this was sort of the original, well, I guess what I would consider one of the original
earliest
edutainment games, the Oregon Trail, where the game, I guess, was developed with a purpose of entertainment, but also a little bit of education. Now, within edutainment games, there are sort of three general categories, I guess. There's one category which is like very academic, whereby the game is like a digital worksheet. So Maths Blaster, that sort of thing, where it's drilling you like, what's 3 times 2? Oh, right, you get a star. I don't think they're that fun. The other two types of games is construction, so construction games where you're actually creating and building things in a digital world, so think Minecraft or back in the day when edutainment was on the rise, Lego Island was a favourite. And the third type of sort of edutainment games is play-centred, or where it's sort of a very engaging game first and the learning is sort of a side effect. So one of those games from a little while ago, so late 80s, early 90s, that's very popular and I think very successful in its role, or its job, was Where is Carmen Sandiego?
And it must be successful because you all cheered. So obviously a fun game.
So very much like game and engagement came first, and the learning was sort of part of playing the game. And this is, like, in my view, one of the best ways to look at using games and play and learning, rather than making a digital maths worksheet.
And fun fact, my first video game crush. Or not fun fact, just a weird fact I probably shouldn't have shared on stage.
Yeah, you told me that last night. I didn't think you were actually going to say it on stage.
I didn't think I was going to say it on stage either. So then we also remembered this game, Mind Maze. Does anyone else remember Mind Maze? Yeah,
I did have to
excellent.
dust off the cobwebs, but when you showed me that picture, I was like, oh, yes, I do remember.
It was on the venerable platform of Encarta 95 on this beautiful dual case CD-ROM. And Mind Maze was just, for the time, it was really, really interesting. I found it really, really enjoyable. And I mean, yeah, sure, it's just quizzes and things, but there was kind of a quest to it. There was a literal maze that you had to solve in the corner of the screen. And in the research for finding some more information about Mind Maze, we actually came across this streamer who speedruns Mind Maze, which I think is one of the most baller things I have ever seen on the internet. Not just for the fact that he speedruns Mind Maze, but the fact that his setup is so on point. I mean, that's some hard work that went into making that look like it's built on Windows 95. Unfortunately, he only has 14 subscribers. He has 15 now.
It's Tim's new favourite.
My new favourite. I will absolutely be following this guy. Absolutely fantastic. So one of the other things that we wanted to talk about was, how do you design a game that is designed to be difficult for a specific reason? And in this edutainment sort of side, this is a game that I had to design and had an incredible, incredible team of co-designers and developers that went along with it and made this game. So bit of backstory without sort of saying too much about where and when and how, etc., because of reasons. We have to make about 30 of these edutainment-style games every year, 30 of them, and they all have to be completable in about 30 seconds, and they all have to kick people off the game in another 10 seconds after that first 30 seconds. That's a very difficult set of rules to develop within. How do you make a game that is engaging, but also says, go away, and you go, oh yeah, fair enough, I'll go try something else now.
And within like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's really, really specific. So this is a game about landing a rocket like a SpaceX rocket. And this was a real challenge because especially my coders who are making the game, they're also the ones that have to, initially test it to see if they can use the joystick to land this rocket, and they can't. It's too difficult. So they started making it easier, and I'm going, no, keep it really, really difficult. And they go, but no one can do it. I'm like, exactly. That's the whole point. We don't let humans fly these things. We make computers do it for us. It's just too difficult. So people don't beat this game. It's an exercise in abject failure where you over and over and over again, you just explode the rocket. And that's why we make the explosion cool, because at least you get some candy at the end. It's the rocket exploding. Now, it is possible to do. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of practice and a lot of practice, but it is absolutely possible to do. And then we actually got an astronaut in to test it. So, guy in the middle with a beautiful moustache, his name is Jim Riley. He's a fantastic, fantastic man. Just to his right is actually Australia's only astronaut, Andy Thomas. Again, a fantastic guy. He didn't test this one, but we have used him before. Jim tried this game, and he said, oh yeah, this is super, super accurate. It's very realistic. It's impossible for humans to fly these things. So, oh wait, I just did it. Hey, that's And I said...
So maybe it needed to be a tad more realistic.
Yeah, well, I said, fair enough, astronaut Dr. James Riley. You are the only person who is allowed to finish it on their third try. So it's very interesting having to make these experiences that are so very specific and yet aren't going to make people feel like they have wasted their time.
But also, it takes me at least 30 seconds or more just to get used to, the controls of a new game. So
absolutely.
Quite an achievement.
So, moving away from difficult games that are difficult to physically play, we also wanted to have a quick look at games that are difficult to play emotionally, or games that you have to struggle to want to sit down, not because of frustration, but because of all these other really complicated feelings that you might get. That Dragon Cancer is one of those games. It is fun, in a huge question mark at the end, because you're not really having a good time, but you do get an experience that makes you want to keep going.
I couldn't finish this game, and I don't plan to because I found it really tough because I was trying, A, not to steal from people, and B, to be very nice to people, and that's just not how you win this game. So in this War of Mine, it's like a post-apocalyptic type world?
It's really complicated, but the point is that it's a war zone. And it is representative of war zones that happen around the world and the plight of refugees when they are fleeing places like this and the difficult choices that they have to make and some of the consequences that might result from their choices. Another game?
One of my favorites. Yeah.
See, now this is a weird one because people laugh and go, oh yeah, this was great. But if you think about it, this is an awful, awful experience. This is a game where you are the ruler of people's lives. You are sending people away. So if you've never played Papers, Please before, you work in some very Soviet-esque style country where you are stamping the papers, the immigration papers, to allow people to come into the country or to leave it again.
And so you've got to follow a really strict set of rules, which are really hard to get your head around. And then if you let someone through and you broke the rules, you get penalised in your pay packet, and then you can't afford food for your family or gas or rent and all that sort of stuff.
But on the flip side, if you let people through and they were actually like a terrorist and they cause harm, then you have to deal with that as well. So it's a game that it makes you do so many difficult choices over and over and over again, and is also just very, very difficult to play. We're going to show one more of these very difficult games, but we do have to put a little caveat up first. Please don't be ashamed to look away, because this is a difficult, difficult game to play. And I seriously struggled with this game. It was super brutal. The point of Spec Ops: The Line, and again, this is also spoiler alert, is that you play as Army Man McGee, and you go through and you're shooting all these people and you're doing all these cool things, and then you accidentally, not really on accident, but kind of on accident, use white phosphorus against an unarmed populace. And I got goosebumps. I hate it so much. But I do recommend playing it, but I hate it. White phosphorus is an illegal weapon. You are not allowed to use it. No, it doesn't matter what the situation is, it is an illegal weapon of war. It's banned under the Geneva Convention. And the reason for that is it essentially turns the air into napalm and burns your skin off. It's a horrible, horrible thing. But then, to add to this, the game always in the loading screens gives you messages like these. It actually shows you that what you're doing is weird. You're having a weird experience, and you're doing it at the expense of these virtual people. And this one still resonates with me. Every now and then I just get flashes of this going, yeah, you're still a good person, sure. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'm not though, am I?
But I guess games like this, the purpose of them is to A, tell a story, and B, so you can have an experience. And it's an experience that is a play and a game that you couldn't have really in real life. So it's still removed from real life. And that's, I guess, why we make these games, is to tell these stories to each other.
Because these are important feelings to feel, and it's better to do it this way than to go out and murder a bunch of innocent people. So then we started thinking as well, the other thing about Spec Ops: The Line is that the controls are terrible, and Phil would always tell me that the controls are terrible on purpose because it's meant to sort of make you more frustrated to play the game. I think he was making fun of me, but I kind of half believe him, and that's the power of Phil.
So we started to try and think of games that were a bit frustrating just because of the way the control system was set up. And this was Tim's first thing that popped into his head, is trying to control the camera on Super Mario 64.
In fact, we had arguments for hours about whether this was a good game or not.
No, we were talking about whether it was bad design or not. We were
Yeah.
like, well, it's revolutionary for the time, but we don't think it was necessarily bad design on purpose.
Because it was essentially the first game of its kind to use 3D cameras in 3D space. And the way you controlled it was through this instrument of torture that should also be banned under the Geneva Convention, the Nintendo 64 controller. And you control it with those 4 little yellow buttons on the top right there, the C buttons, and they only move the camera in 45-degree increments. It's just awful to play. And then the question is, how do you actually play this thing? I mean, what's the correct way to hold... Oh, that's it. I never thought about it that way.
You just need another arm grafted onto your torso. So a person who makes it their job to go out and make super difficult controllers to play with is Twitch streamer Rudism. And if you were here last year and you went to the closing ceremony and the Omegathon Grand Final, he designed a special controller, which was a balance board, and the Omeganauts had to try and play Crossy Road with a balance board. This is some videos of some of the controllers and games that he makes and plays. I really like Overwatch, so I've been watching his Overwatch ones. He did Lucio with a glove and had to do the hand motions to control Lucio. He did, I think my favorite was the new character Brigitte has a shield and a flail. So the shield was, of course, a pizza, and the flail was a baguette. So
because
he embeds...
Baguette, yeah, he did.
He embeds sensors in them and then controls it usually with an Arduino board, and then plugs it into his computer and actually plays the game in real life. And so the Winston one with the bananas is really good too. And he just makes his life difficult for himself.
Oh, I should have put the logo there. He's playing it on the dance mat. Yeah.
The most difficult thing I saw him do that I can't believe he's done it, was he does a Nuzlocke run on Pokemon, which is where I don't remember all the rules, but basically you can only capture the first Pokemon you see on any route, so there's lots of Pidgeys. If a Pokemon dies, you can't revive it, so it's gone. And I can't remember the other rules, but there's some of the major rules. You have to nickname your Pokemon. And he Nuzlocked 3 Pokemon games at the same time. So he was using one controller. So every time he pushed up on the controller, it went up on all 3 Pokemon games. And he managed to complete all 3 games. It took him a long time. Sorry? I think he managed to get to the Elite 4 battles at the same time, yeah. But I can't remember. I just remember seeing the ending, and it took him many months to get there. And so I just couldn't believe that he'd done something. That sounds very painful to me.
We looked at Rudism and we're like, yeah, he's pretty cool, but we're cooler. We can make a controller that is better than that. We can make the most difficult and advanced controller of all time. Something that puts everything that he has done to shame. We're not going to harness bananas or pizzas or baguettes. We are going to use the controller of another person's human body. And we're going to do that by hijacking their nervous system. Yeah. Yeah, so what I'm going to need is a volunteer. I've got one person that's already like, me! Oh my God, me!
Electrocute me!
So before I do choose anyone, I do have to have the caveat. This does involve electricity. If you have a pacemaker or any other heart condition, please don't put your hand up. And if you have aversion to moderate electric shocks, also, please. You are really, really keen. Are you sure? Yeah, okay, Bree, come on up. What's your name?
Trinity.
Trinity, welcome.
Did I take my jewelry off?
Nah.
We'll
Science.
find out.
If you can come over here, please, and sit down. I will get you to roll up your sleeve, whichever hand you don't necessarily want the most.
Maybe the hand you don't write with?
Yeah, the hand you don't write with, the least important hand that you own.
I use it for basketball.
Yeah, it's not that important. So, we're going to be using a device to... yeah, sure. Let's find out. We're going to be using a device to hijack your nervous system. And we are going to be doing... we're going to be playing a game, because obviously we can't just hijack your nervous system and that's it. That's boring. That's not a game, right? That's just being a mad scientist. So,
Which Tim is, but you know.
no, I am a mad scientist, but I'm also playing a game.
So we're going to play a simple clicker game, see how often you can tap the phone in a set amount of time. And I guess, are we going to compete?
Yeah,
Shall I go first?
Would you like to go first while I'm doing it?
What?
So this is I found this incredible clicker game. It's called Earth, and every time you tap, a person gets born. And you have to get the highest population.
All right, so how long am I going for?
30 say 10 seconds, 20 seconds. I don't know. It depends on the stamina of my controller, really. Because as soon as she goes, oh God, please stop.
Why don't we do 10? And we'll count down from 10, all right.
Okay, cool.
So I'm starting with 0 people,
put your arm
and
out
we'll
like that.
count down from
Excellent.
10, and
I'm
I'll
just
see how
gonna
many
pop a
people I
couple
can
of
get. Right, ready?
electrodes.
Can I do multiple taps or just one finger?
One finger. I only get one. Come on.
All right. Oh, your phone went off.
So I'm just going to get...
All right.
so your-
10,
This is your radio.
9, 8,
No?
7,
And then
6, 5,
on
4,
the other
3,
part of your
2,
radio.
1. All right, I've got 68 people, and I think we're good with the rising sea waters with only 68 people.
Excellent. I don't think I can beat 68. That's okay. There's so
What?
many things to plug in, but that's also
You
fine.
should have done this
That-
before we started.
Yeah, well, I know. What are you, my mum?
No, definitely not.
Okay, so then I need
Right.
to. Which hand do I not necessarily want? Oh, gee, no, I'm going to use this one because this one has a bunch of metal in it because I was hit by a car recently. Yay. Yeah. Actually, it wasn't that recently. It was exactly a year ago because I had a broken arm at last PAX, if you were here.
Right?
Oh, you were here. Fantastic. That's
We can
not a
have
good
one less
Let's-
audience member next year, Tim. This isn't a good thing.
One, yeah. We might lose an audience member. Oh, no. Okay.
Should have thought of this beforehand.
I should have thought of a lot of things beforehand. I don't live my life like that.
You should have thought of that haircut beforehand.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Was that a sick burn?
Normally I say these jokes in the practice and then I don't say them on stage.
Okay, we're almost there. I need to put one. This one's going to go on you here. How are you feeling? You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Is your heart okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's good, because I haven't turned it on yet. Now, where do my ones go? You guys are messed up. I love it.
We thought we were going to struggle to get anyone.
Yeah, I guess that tells us about the caliber of people at PAX. They are that good that they will electrocute themselves for us. Okay, so what I am...
It's important.
Science is
Yes.
important. It's all for science. The way this essentially works is that I'm going to be hijacking the nerve signals in my radial nerve that goes down from the brachial plexus, down my arm, through into my hand. I had to learn these because I'm not a biologist. I'm a scientist. I'm a real scientist. Oh. I promised I wouldn't make that joke, and it just comes out.
You promised you weren't going to make the psychology joke. But,
Okay,
you know.
so we are going to turn it.
This doesn't sting, does it?
We'll find out.
Shouldn't sting. What it should do though is turn on.
As long as I don't set anything on fire by accident.
No. Megan, can you get me the other battery out of the other TENS unit?
Is this a TENS machine? Do you know pregnant women use this in labour?
I mean, the machines themselves are fantastic
The
because
theory is like you'll be distracted by all the rest of the pain by this other amount of pain.
Oh no, why aren't you working? You.
Well, last year it was the videos that didn't work, you know, so we're having good luck with
Okay.
the PowerPoint, so, you know,
Give me
something
this
else
one.
had to
Let's
go
try
wrong.
this one. That's
I'm
okay.
going to completely replug everything in.
No, you're not working either. Ooh, that's
Like this one's here for nothing?
maybe.
This is what true science looks like.
It is alive. Excellent. Yes.
All right, also your phone locked itself, so.
I'm going to, so you can see that, you might be able to see on the board, there's some lights on here. When I squeeze my hand, it recognizes that signal. And what we're going to do is we're going to amplify that signal and send it into your arm. You ready? I'm going to start off low, and if you're uncomfortable, please say stop. For legal reasons. So, we're going to start off on 2. Do you feel that? Yeah. A little bit of a twinge. I'm going to move up to 3. Oh.
Hey!
Yeah. Now, to prove that this is real, I'm going to... You can't see my hand moving? Is her hand moving?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Is any higher, is that going to be bad? Are you...
Do you go like...
That was a maybe. Okay, so... And the other thing to prove it's real, Megan, if you can move my hand for me, the way it works is that it has to be...
Is that not meant to happen?
No, it's not. Do it now. Oh, that's... It's because I'm thinking about it.
Well, stop thinking about it.
Okay, there we go. So, Megan. Oh, you know what it is? The tablecloth is conductive. That's hilarious.
Did you like short the first?
Yeah, I did. So, Megan, move my hand for me, please.
No, that went before.
Okay, never mind. That should work. What we're gonna do is pop the.
All right, you need to like unlock your phone.
Sorry, I need to use a fingerprint. Okay, you ready?
All right, how do you reset the game? It's still got 70 people living there.
Subtract 70. We're scientists. We can maths. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, count me down. 3, 2,
You're
1,
cheating.
go.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Your total?
Grand total.
13.
I blame my controller. It's faulty. Everyone, big round of applause for our volunteer.
Trinity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trinity.
And I do, yes. If you can stay around after the show, we're going to get a couple of Steam codes your way as well, just for being such a champion. So, how much time do we have left?
Nothing.
Just give us a yell, person in the black. How about? 3 minutes. Excellent. 3 minutes worth of questions. If you're the loudest person, start asking.
No, that
No?
never works.
You can remain offended.
That's right. How about we'll finish up, and if you have some questions after the show, you can come and see us. But you had the mouse.
I do.
Mouse. But
So-
I guess basically what we wanted to say at the end of all that is that it doesn't really matter where you fit in terms of competence or challenge level, and everyone will be completely different. So as long as you're playing a game that you find enjoyable in a way that you find enjoyable, then that's okay. And everyone is going to be completely different. So if you like really difficult or challenging games like Dark Souls, that's okay. If you just want to play a game for a story, like Horizon Zero Dawn, but maybe on easy, that's okay too. So there is no wrong way to play, and if you enjoy games and play, that's great, and we do too. And
yeah, so we just want to leave you with this final message, that it's okay no matter how you want to play the game. Don't let anyone tell you that you are playing it wrong. Don't let anyone tell you you're playing the wrong game.
Or that if you don't play this one particular game, you're not a gamer.
Exactly, yeah. There is no such thing as not being a gamer. If you are playing a game, you are a gamer. We are, and that's why we're here at PAX. We are an inclusive group of people. But it's okay to do all these things. It's okay to mash quick load and quick save. It's okay to use game guides. It doesn't matter how you're getting your enjoyment. If you are enjoying yourself and it's not at the expense of another person,
maybe not camp.
that is absolutely okay. So we do hope that you feel you have learned something new, or maybe you have a new lease on your experiences, and we hope that we have allayed some of the maybe latent guilt that you might have felt for some of the games that you might have enjoyed. So thank you very much for coming. We are Press X to Science. We would love to have you listen to the podcast. We are interviewing, we're doing our second season right now.
Yes.
And we're interviewing a bunch of amazing scientists and a bunch of amazing game developers as well, talking about their experiences and how we can all improve our lives through both science and video games. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah.
Think she can't get a last-second clutch? Watch this. Think he can't carry his team while streaming in high resolution? All the while recording a once-in-a-lifetime win? Watch this. Think leveling up only happens in-game? Watch this. On Intel Core i7, they'll rise to every challenge. Now it's your turn. Game, record, stream without compromise on Intel Core i7.